Hello Commandos, I want to give a big shout out to our channel members. These guys support the channel and help create the high quality gameplay content. You guys rock. Go Commando.
Hello everyone, welcome to Dice Commando and the Commando Cast. I'm Andrew with you here as always. So with the recent announcement of Set 11, Faltering Allegiances by the Continuing Committee, we have a lot to look forward to for the future of this game. One of the primary things that set coming out means is that we will be looking at rotation. So in this series of videos, what I want to do is look at the impacts to various metas in the meta going forward of the Legacies block rotating out. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Commando Cast. So in the last several episodes, we've been looking at the impacts of Legacies block rotating out and the impacts of certain cards leaving the meta and what that'll mean going forward. What I want to talk about today are Legacies block's top reprint candidates as I see them. And then I put out kind of some feelers a couple weeks ago on Dice Commando channel, and I actually have some feedback from other people in here as well. So my number one reprint candidate of all the cards in Legacies block is Tactical Mastery. So Tactical Mastery was reprinted in the two-player starter. So this was actually Awakenings. It was reprinted in the two-player starter. Tactical Mastery has literally been here for the entire life of the game. This card is, by definition, the red faction identity, red villain faction identity. It's a great, fantastic balance card, right? Action cheating absolutely has a place in this game. You know, not repeatable action cheating, and that's what this card does, right? It lets you get out, do a little something, it costs you money, and then it goes away, right? Fantastic card. And I think the reason I wanted to start with this one, even though it's my number one, the reason I wanted to start with this one is I think at baselines kind of going through this, where my head is at, right? So it's not necessarily that we need to reprint the card that is the most powerful, but what I'm looking for are primary utility type cards that are general staples, and not just of the game, but of their certain factions, right? So again, in this case, Red Villain this is fundamental to Red Villain. And I can't imagine Red Villain in Star Wars Destiny without this card. And that's why this card is my number one. Right, so what I have here is Obi-Wan's Hut for a battlefield. This kind of fits into the blue. It's really blue hero more than anything, but it fits into the blue faction identity. So again, this is another two-player set card. I really think that this one would be very well to be reprinted. I think it would do a lot of good. It's a very balanced card. Give a blue character a shield. You still have the option if you're not playing blue, but you're probably not going to do it. And it gives kind of it's like you would take this battlefield if you're playing blue because it helps you and not your opponent. Very fundamentally good card, doesn't do anything stupid. I really like this guy and I'd like to see it reprinted. Another battlefield I would like to see reprinted is the Comm Tower on Scarif. Resolve one of your dice, increasing its value by 1 if you spot a plot. Right? I think it's a very good battlefield. It's very useful in certain situations. And granted, most decks use a plot in some fashion these days. But again, if you're using a plot that's going to stay in play after upkeep, or after setup, you can run this and try and give yourself an advantage, right? I think this is a very good plot, or a very good battlefield, twice now, and I'd like to see this one done again. I would like to see Profitable Connection be reprinted, right? So in the last episode, we kind of talked about the importance of filler plots, and this one was kind of borderline around filler or build around. But this is really a core fundamental card, core fundamental plot, and also kind of, it has always really kind of set the baseline on plot value. And I think that having it in the game as an option and really almost as a balancing mechanic to the other plots, I think would be really healthy. So I'd like to see this one reprinted. This one's kind of cheating because I have 3 on here. What I'm really going for here are core removal cards. So there's 3 of them in particular. The Forces with Me, which is remove a ranged or an indirect. Here's Mislead, which is remove a character die 2 or less, right? A very good card, doesn't require a spot. Then we have Battle Fatigue. So yes, this one's villain, but I think Battle Fatigue was a very well-designed card. I'd like to see all 3 of these reprinted. I don't know that they will be because it's very easy to come up with something that's balanced like that. Battle Fatigue, I'm a little... that's one that I've really enjoyed in the past. I think it's a really good design card because it gives you an objective to spread it around and then you get the removal. But again, the fundamental ideas of the core removal cards, right? Having a 1 for 2, right? Having stuff that are on balance really sets a baseline for the game. And again, if you're going to create new ones, why not just use the old ones that we know already work and are good for value? So I'd like to see some of these guys reprinted as well. Next is Into the Garbage Chute. Exhaust one of your characters to remove up to 2 dice showing damage. This card is the counter card to Best Defense. Now do note that the Best Defense was from Awakenings, and then it was reprinted in Convergence because, again, it was one of those red villain identity cards that they wanted to stick with. Very balanced, take 3, remove, take 3 on one of your red guys, and remove 2 dice. Again, this is just the hero counter to it. There's a lot of arguments over which one's better, which one's worse. I still think Best Defense is better, but I do think that there's value in hero having this card, right? So to be clear, I could see there being a new version of this card that is color affiliated. Color affiliated, maybe it's red in that case, so it can be more of a direct mirror. But I think this card definitely serves a purpose, and I'd like to see it reprinted going forward. Crash Landing. I think this is a great card. I think it's done a lot of good. I mean, it was. I think in Legacies it was kind of designed to be an Afra card. I'm not really sure. It was in the Boba starter. I don't know if that means anything. I guess Entangle was too. But I think this card, there's really no reason not to reprint this card. It serves a purpose. It's really it's just a tactical trade. You're spending 1 card from your hand to get a tactical advantage on the damage, right? You're not saving damage, but you're distributing it, so it gives you an advantage for the 1 card, and I like this card a lot. Next is Well Connected. Well Connected is just a good card, right? It hasn't really been broken. You're giving your opponent a card, but if you play it tactically, you can get around them not getting the card because you can do it after they claim, and then effectively they didn't get a card advantage. So I like Well Connected a lot. It facilitates a lot of different options out there without being kind of crazy, stupid, broken. Next, so I'm probably going to take some flack for this one. And to be clear, I'm not advocating that Vader get reprinted, but I am advocating that Fear and Dead Men get reprinted, right? What this card has done is it's kind of one of the very few options that a big has against playing wides, right? Because remember, those are one of the direct counters. So if you're playing a big that can do a lot of damage output, but you have small health pool, somebody playing wides has a larger health pool and they can try to take you down, right? That's classic Destiny counter. And bringing Fear and Dead Men back kind of facilitates them having to think about, maybe I don't want to play Ewoks because now I might have to take 18 damage, right? I think that this card's very good balancing for the meta. Maybe we see it would be cool if there was a version that Anakin could use, right? That would be kind of neat. So maybe we do see a neutral version of this. So maybe it's not exactly this card, but I think this card serves a purpose, and I think that setting a reprint or something very similar to this would be very healthy for the meta. Next is Entangle. This card's fantastic. Costs you 2, so it basically blows your turn away. You do have to spot yellow, and you can do a lot of things to low value or multi-die decks. I'd really like to see this card reprinted. I know there's a lot of people on board with me on that one. It does continue to bolster the yellow removal package. Again, because I don't think we're seeing easy pickings again. I think this kind of helps Yellow Hero again because they're losing more of an impact. So I think Entangle needs reprinted. Next card's Bubble Shield. Again, we don't see much of this card, but it's just a fundamentally good card and again, things change over time, so we'll see how valuation happens in the next set. We'll see how functionally it works. But Bubble Shield was a really good card because when indirect damage came out, it was slightly overvalued to account for the fact that it wasn't direct and it could be distributed. And I think over time we've seen that that's not necessarily as impactful as I think they originally thought it was going to be. But cards like Bubble Shield, I think, really kind of help to offset that. And again, I completely get that we haven't been seeing much of Bubble Shield in the last several metas. But I think having it there, again, is one of those baseline cards that provides you with the option of what to do there. So again, Bubble Shield is definitely on my list. I even like the art here. Let's just 1-for-1 it. Next card's Impulsive. You guys know I love this card mainly because I love my red-yellow hero decks. But this card is something that has really kept hero kind of even close to being in it. So I think that hero would be in a bad spot without this card. I'm actually advocating in this case that we actually leave this card as it is. I don't want necessarily villain to have something like this, especially with their facilitation characters that they have. I think this needs to stay hero. I think this just needs to be a direct reprint. I'd like to see this card again. Next on my list is Beguile. I really can't imagine this game without Beguile in it. It's such a good, well-designed card because it really, I mean, not only is it thematic, it fits the blue side of it, and granted there's no spot, but I don't know. I just like this card. I mean, I can go on and on, but I really like this card. I think it's fair. I think it's well costed, and I think that it brings a lot of strategic play to the table, kind of slow playing and then hitting. I think it sets up a lot of good situations, and I'd like to see this card again. Next is Heirloom Lightsaber. So again, this is a neutral redeploy 3-cost weapon. It's not necessarily the best lightsaber that we've seen, but I think that having this in the game serves a purpose, right? The actual lightsaber that we saw reprinted in Convergence, they did that obviously because they knew that was needed, right? Something for a neutral side. I'd like to see Heirloom pop back. It's just better. It's more functional. And, again, this is one of those cards that doesn't necessarily see play in every deck, but it's always there kind of setting the baseline. And I think that's been a good thing for the game. All right, last on my list here is the Arc 170 Starfighter. So again, this is a card that hasn't necessarily seen a ton of play. It's funny because if you ask a lot of people like, oh my God, I love that ship, right? Everybody thinks this is a really good, really well-designed card. It's just that there's a lot of stuff out there that's just better than it. But this card really, the design of this card really facilitates, I think, what we hope that future vehicle decks, or kind of what we all wish a vehicle deck would be, and hopefully what they'll be in the future. If you blow up my stuff, I can still at least get something back and play it again. So this is a card I like a lot. I'd really like to see again. So now let's move on to the Dice Commando community reprint thoughts. So again, what I did, I just put a post up on my Facebook page and let people share their thoughts of what they'd like to see reprinted. And some of the stuff I agreed with, some of it I didn't, but I wanted to go through some of the stuff that was on there. So bartering, I think there were more requests for bartering than any other card on there. There were a lot of requests for this little guy to be reprinted. I agree with the fundamental argument that bartering has done a lot of good, but what I don't like about bartering is the special. The special on bartering has enabled or set up too many feel bad moments in this game. So what I'd really like to see in bartering is some 1-cost yellow ability very similar to it that gives the money in the ramp side, which I think is what people really want out of it, and not so much the setting up the mill decks for your no answer, right? Because remember, no answer is not going away. It's got a whole nother block to go. So that's why I don't want to see bartering 1-for-1 reprinted. I'd like to see some other version of it in existence. But I absolutely agree that the yellow ability 1-cost does serve a purpose in the game. So let's go for that. Let's just not have it be bartering. Dean McCarthy popped up Scorched Earth, Palpatine counter for non-blue villain. I like it. I like the suggestion. If I was to do it again, I'd make it neutral. Because again, you look at all the Palpatine counters, and all the Palpatine counters are freaking villain, right? You have Mind Extraction, not Mind Extraction. Either way, sorry. You have Mind Extraction, and then you have Scorched Earth, and both of them are villain, right? So Scorched Earth, I think, is a great card. I really like what it does. So let's just make this and make it neutral, right? Call it something else, make it neutral. Shan Talon proposed scruffy-looking Nerf herder. I agree. I like it a lot. This is Heroes really only get in the hand staple card. There's even a little more tactical than the villain side, which makes it more limiting, which is about right, about par for the course. The one exception here is that with the detect mechanic that we've seen spoiled for coming in set 11, which remember, so detect is you basically play with some number of a detected card, stays in your hand for all functional purposes, but it's visible. So I am wondering how this would work with that detect mechanic. So I'm not 100% on board on this just because I don't want to interfere. I mean, not like I'm doing it, right? But I wouldn't want to interfere with that until we see how it plays out. So maybe this is something that gets reprinted multiple sets down the road. But I like where your head's at. I do like giving Hero that hand control option. I just don't know necessarily what that's going to look like with Detect. All right, so Olli Cole said Outer Rim Outpost. 100% agree, right? It's a great favorite battlefield of mine. I just didn't have it on there because I think there's a lot of other battlefields that do something similar, But I have no problem reprinting this one. I think it's another good fundamental battlefield. And again, what would be the point of printing yet another battlefield that does something yet very similar? I agree. Let's just reprint the sucker. Okay, Dean McCarthy says Vibro Cutlass. I agree. I like the Vibro Cutlass. It's kind of always, again, been one of those, and it kind of fits the theme of what we've been doing, right? It's not necessarily one of your most aggressive, your most valuable weapons out there, but it's a filler weapon that's always been there on the fringe, and it always supplies a place for people to go to when they need what they need. So again, it's fundamental. It's got the redeploy. It gives advantage for being on yellow, but it doesn't have to be on yellow. I think it's very well designed. All right, Alex Villanova says Ataru Strike. And this one was actually on my list, and I took it off because I don't like that it's not a move. So what I would like to see is this reprinted, and I'd actually even like to see it fundamentally reprinted as Ataru Strike, because I assume at some point in the future we can get Ataru as a form, or as a move, or as a form. So this I think really just needs to be reprinted and call it a move. Maybe you have to change it differently depending on what the Ataru form does. I grant you that. But I think that Ataru Strike definitely is a great hero staple. It's a great hero threat, right? Because I don't know if we're ever going to get riposte again. So without that, which is that's a throw shield, this one's just a little better. So I don't know. I like it a lot. So those are just going through some of the community suggestions. I'm curious to see what else you guys are thinking. And your opinions, of course, may very much vary from mine. Maybe a lot of people want to see their favorite cards reprinted. You'll notice a lack of some of my favorite cards on there. But what I'm really looking for, at least when I approached it, was just kind of those fundamental things that really make Destiny what it is. Even if they're not actually the card in the deck, then being there kind of makes other choices around it. So I think that that's pretty much it for today. Again, I'm curious to see what you guys are thinking. And thanks for joining me. And if nothing else, go Commando.